Okay, welcome aboard, everybody. This is Nothing But Fantasy. Tuesday night is back. We did not do anything last week because it's been so busy and chaotic that we took a week off. So we're back. We have Lou Blasi with us tonight. Lou Blasi is from Fantistics Insider Baseball. And I mean, it flows off my tongue so well because his show follows ours on Sunday mornings. He's from 10 to 1 and we are from 7 to 10. So Lou Blasi gets to come on a little early and listen to all the stuff that's going on in the back, which is good. Right?
Oh, it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing to just listen to you guys do the show and get the breaks. It should be pay-per-view. It really should.
I know, right?
Yeah.
People are going to pay us for this back of the house stuff. Everybody that's in the chat room, nice to see you. Thanks for coming around. We will answer your questions on Facebook. I have a couple questions for Lou Blasi, but tonight we're going to talk about this weekend where Lou is actually in Tout Wars Mixed head-to-head with me this year.
That's right.
I knew that you didn't have access to last year's draft. It being an auction, you kind of want to know a little bit about how other people draft and, what they're willing to spend their money on and stuff. And the beauty of this, is the fact that everybody in this league is putting it all out there. So if you want to do a little digging, you could find out how everybody else drafts. And Ariel Cohen won the league last year. I came in third, but he always writes a recap of the draft, and he wrote like an extensive one. If you want to look at that, he went through every person in Tout Wars.
I read his last year. Yeah, I read his piece from last year.
It really makes things easy, So we're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss that. I sent Lou the results of the last year's draft and the standings.
Yeah.
Ariel, since he won, he got to pick the rules this year. And every year this league, it started out as Tout Wars X, and that was the first year that I was in Tout Wars. But basically what it meant was every year we changed rules. We did head-to-head, we did roto, we did all kinds of different ways to count points. And 1 year we did 3 points per inning, and the next year we did 1 point per inning. So you can imagine the difference in the value of players at that point.
I don't have to. I have the draft advisory program. It will tell me.
Okay, so Fantistics is really well known for their draft software. They have a whole draft package. Someone else was doing the same thing, Ray Flowers with Guru. His draft package lasts all season, and it seems to me that your draft package is similar in that you guys it lasts throughout the season with weekly pickups and keeping track of your team and stuff. You just put it in the software and it lets you know what to do, right?
Well, we have a lot of in-season services. It starts with the daily email where we have a writer for each league, and there's probably 30 to 50 player items in there each morning that will include injury updates, playing time updates, news updates, and then the analyst will write up a half a dozen, maybe 20 players. And it'll be about what's going on with them. They went 3 for 4 last night. They've been 20 for their last 45. This is what's happening, and analyzing it and see what it means going forward to see if they can figure out if they're on a hot streak or whether they found something. There's also daily DFS notes in there as well. This pitcher, talking about the matchup of the pitcher, and this hitter is looking at a pitcher that's a fastball guy. He's a fastball guy. He's done really well. Might be a good DFS play tonight. That type of thing. So that's the email every day. Then we've got pitching logs. We've got the player tracker, which keeps all of our notes for the players. So if you're thinking of picking up a player, for example, you can go back in and look at our last 7 days of notes or our last 14 days of notes or our last 3 weeks of notes and see what we've been writing about him recently and his performance and what we think of it. There's the weekly player rater. You can put your lineup in and put your team in, and it will tell you all the starting pitchers coming up that he's going to be opposed by this week, whether they're lefty or righty, the rating of that pitcher, how well he's pitching lately. So it gives it a kind of a strength of schedule rating for each player in your lineup. So you can make some decisions on the tiebreakers. And this goes back to Lyle Logan, and Lyle Logan is our starting rotation guy. And all he does on the site is keep track of news flow for expected starts. And what he does is he lays out each team's starting rotation for the next 2 weeks as he knows it with a confidence of pick, so that if you're going to pick up a guy for streaming, whether he's going to pitch next week, who he's going to pitch against, who the starting pitcher is going to be against him, to the best of knowledge at the time. And Lyle is maniacal. He like updates it 2 or 3 times a day. That's all he does. And he's really into it. And it's super accurate.
Awesome. Yes. I mean, a lot of times the websites will have just computer generated projected starters. So that obviously is going to, your situation is going to include all the 2-start pitchers and DFS and everything like that. And Fantistics was the very first baseball website to introduce the theory of position scarcity in the draft software. You guys have been very accurate. You've correctly forecast the statistical direction on approximately 70% of professional baseball players every year since 2003, it looks like. And seriously, that's about it. That's like the top of the projection systems can't get any more accurate than that. It's impossible because human element is never going away in baseball. So like
Right.
70% is absolutely like an A+ grade, right? For projections.
Yeah, well, yeah, 70% correlation is pretty strong. Anthony Perry is our founder and statistician. He's a Wall Street analyst. He was working on Wall Street and just got started in doing the baseball and football side out here, moved his family to Arizona, and this is what he does now. Came up with our projection system, and the projection system is terrific, and it's also very adaptive. It's been changing year to year to year as we get new stats. As you know, Andrea,
Yes.
we get hard hit percentage a few years ago, and then after that, we
Barrels.
now we're getting StatCast and exit velocity and things like that, and they're being incorporated in as we get more information. And the projections right now are based on quality of contact to a large extent. It's a lot of StatCast data involved in there, and the projections are terrific. They're a little bit different. You have to kind of work into them a little bit because, for example, he doesn't do it in the way the Yankees will get X amount of at-bats this year. And he doesn't look at all the Yankees players and try to figure out what percentage of those bats he's trying to get. He gives a at-bat percentage, an at-bat projection for the player, based on what he should be doing. And if he got this amount of at-bats, this is what he would produce. So it's a little bit different, takes a little bit getting used to. And the other thing about the software, the draft advisory program that is really weird, you tried it today.
I did.
Yeah, you took a look into it today. When people first start, they run into this little thing that we call trusting the force. And what happens is the software will tell you something. The draft advisory program will tell you something. And the thing about it is the draft advisory program is a very clinical exercise. It's basically based on indicators and what we use for projections and what the player is going to do. And oftentimes it will tell you things that don't make sense to you. And
it was doing that. I tried to do a mock draft and it kept telling me players that there is the next best player on the list available. And I'm like, no, it's not to me. But, I saw that there's like 3 different ways that you could have the players ordered in the mock draft. And I mean, there's ADP and then there's the VAM. Is that
VAM?
right?
Yeah, VAM. Yeah. There's several ways you can rank the players or look at the players while you're drafting. VAM goes back to position scarcity. And what it is it's called value against mean. And what it allows you to do is what you have to do at the top of the draft. In other words, at the top of the draft, you normally have to make decisions on, do I want this pitcher or do I want this shortstop?
Yeah.
Or do I want this outfielder? And that's a very difficult thing to compare. It's apples and dump trucks, right? I mean, how do you compare the value of the two of them? That's VAM's job. VAM tells you which one is more valuable. It's based on position scarcity in part. It's based on predictability of statistics in another start. And it's based on, it just gives you an idea of how valuable this guy is in his particular position and why you should roster him because you're getting some separation there. And then VAM for us, we advise people you use VAM for about the first 100 picks when you don't have to worry so much about your roster or your statistical distribution. You're just trying to decide between an outfielder and a relief pitcher or a shortstop and an outfielder or a catcher and first baseman. This allows you to make those comparisons and judgments. And then once you get about 100 picks in, you have to start looking at your roster. You have to start looking at what stats you need. You have to start looking at the economy. In other words, how many outfielders are left, how many home runs are left, how many saves are left, that type of thing, and make some decisions. And at that point, we go over to estimated auction value.
Okay, so so going back to what you said about the new people using the software and they believe in the force.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Sometimes we have
explain it, or
well, we get calls on the show and we get emails all the time and goes, this is, I'm at this particular point in the draft and the draft advisory program is telling me this is the best guy on the board right now. Doesn't make any sense to me. Can you explain it to me? And so our laughing answer is usually you either got to decide to trust the force or not trust the force. Because the draft advisory program, and it's right in the name, it's an advisory program. It tells you clinically what is going to happen or what we think is going to happen based on our projections. And based on our projections, this guy is going to be of more use to you at this point than this other guy. Now, when you and I are drafting and we're all the same way, biases get involved. We get into our ego for baseball and things like that. And it's like, I don't like that guy, or I like this guy better. And I really want this guy because I've owned him for the last 3 years.
Right. So he burned me last year and I can't stand the guy on my team anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Matt Boyd. But so those kind of decisions come into it. So what this does is it gives you the clinical reading of technically what's going on. You play DFS, right?
Yes.
What's your best DFS sport?
Well, I won. I don't, I spend a couple dollars just to be in the tournaments, but I did win a pool of like 300 people. So I won like a couple $100. Nothing big. I just
in baseball.
Yes. I don't. What's my best sport?
Yeah.
I only really play baseball.
Okay. Well, for example, my best sport is basketball in DFS, and I don't know if the basketball is stuffed or puffed. I'm not that big an NBA guy. And that helps me to an extent because I can be very clinical about it. My ego doesn't get involved. It's player A and player B. That's all it's about. My partner, Skylar, on the Fantistics Insider Baseball program, he does well in golf, and it's kind of the same thing. Doesn't know a ton about golf, but he knows player analysis and process, and he knows player A and player B and can make good decisions. So this is what it is. The draft advisory program gets you into the process. You have to make some judgment calls on top of it. You should make some judgment calls on top of it, but this gives you a very clinical idea of the value, and then at that point, you have to decide whether to trust the force or not.
So along the same lines of bias and stuff, I talked to Lenny, and any women that are watching this right now, or any women that want to play fantasy, it's usually like, well, I don't know any of the players and I don't know this. No, it's just a game of putting parts together to make a whole. And maybe the less you do know of players, the better you will be at fantasy, because you only see numbers. Like you don't know anything about, so-and-so and his drunk driving ticket or
right,
any of that. So there is definitely a plus side to that. So we're talking about I want to plug a couple players in. Let's share your screen. Okay. We're gonna share this system. I did try it today. It's full. I mean, it's jam-packed full of little things that you can do in there. So we decided that it would be in the best interest to share his screen and he can show us. And we're going to plug some players in there. I hope you have the settings for Tout Wars, this coming up one.
Yeah, the league I have set in here when you share the screen is the Tout Wars League, head-to-head league coming up, which is CBS points, as you said. So this is the settings. I loaded all the settings in for Tout Wars on this particular setting right here. So this is my screen for it off the top.
Okay.
And you got your first Trust the Force issue right here. It was the first thing that I saw. Do you see anything here?
Kevin Gausman, I see him. I know that one of our friends in the chat room who actually sent in a question wants to know about Kevin Gausman and his strikeout rate. What do I see here?
If you look at, I'll get to Kevin Gausman in a second, but if you look at the right-hand column, that's the top 100 players sorted by VAM, value against mean. And if you look at it here, the first thing you're going to notice, the first thing I noticed when I put in all the settings for the league was the first starting pitcher is Jacob deGrom at 12 overall.
I know. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, in an auction league, we're not going to have to trust the force for drafting, but this is something that goes against your intuition, right? In a points league, you want to go starting pitching, you want to go starting pitching big. And that's not a problem. It's probably a good strategy, but the clinical answer to this is, and we've got the fantasy points right over there at 578 for deGrom.
I'm sorry, you see, that's the dollar amount in the second column from the Right.
The bold column is fantasy points under this column. It says FP.
Right. I see that one. What's the
ADP
dollar value?
I'll go across here. You've got the player, you've got the position. ADP is the current ADP. Now you can select ADP from a couple different sources, from CBS, from Yahoo, from RT Sports, from NFBC, or you can select a blended one. I think I might have NFBC set up in here, but you can set it up in the settings. So that's current ADP. And again, you can update this every day and it will give you the current ADP.
Okay.
EAV here is the estimated auction value. And in this format, this is the dollar value of the player before anything is done. In other words, with a clean slate, no money has been spent, no players are out of the pool.
Okay.
This is the universal value of the player in the auction at this point.
Okay. Right.
The inflation auction value changes as every player comes off the board, because as every player comes off the board, money comes out of the economy, and stats come out of the economy, and a position comes out of the economy.
Okay.
So that's going to change the values for us. So this is going to be dynamic throughout the draft.
Okay.
So if, for example, the first 10 players off the board are starting pitchers, the inflation value for most starting pitchers is probably going to go up.
So the average value stays the same because that's what the market is really going to pay for the player, and then the inflation is
that's what he's worth in a perfect world. That's what he's put with no money spent and no player off the board. This is what he's worth. It's his abject value. Yeah.
And so then the points are on the right side. Okay.
Right.
It's interesting that the pitchers are not even as valuable as those hitters, because you do get 3 points an inning in this league, and you get 7 points for a win and 7 points for a save. It is interesting to me that, of course, Juan Soto is right up there. Bellinger. How does it take into consideration the fact that Cody Bellinger is injured? Or, I mean, he's coming back from an injury. He had surgery the off season. What do we do about him?
All right, Cody Bellinger, and here's where we get into projections here. And the projections have to do the purpose of the projections here. As you can see, in 2021, we projected him with 575 at bats. And basically, we're trying to give out what he would produce with 575 at bats. Now, you can go into the program, and if you say to yourself, because of the injury value, or whatever we learn in the meantime, and by the way, if he were to get hurt this week, one of the updates, if we needed to cut back the at-bats to 550 or 525, Anthony would do that, and it would show up in the next web update if news flow tells us he's going to get less at-bats. If you feel, however, he's going to get less at-bats, you can change that number, and you say, I'm not paying for 575 at-bats from him. I don't think he's going to get it. I think it's going to be closer to 500. You'd put 500 at-bats in, and everything would adjust accordingly, and his ranking would change.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's try it.
Put in.
Look, all you have to do is double click on it and then start typing in what you think is at bat. Let's put 350.
350 at bats?
Yeah. I guess that would change everything.
So with 1.35.
Will it change his runs, his home runs, everything like that?
Let's see. And I'm going to hit recalculate up here.
Okay.
So Cody Bellinger was third overall with a VAM of 15.8, and we're looking at 583.
Okay. Did we already do it?
No, it's going to take a second to.
Okay.
It's going to take a second to work through here.
Okay, and look, if you just even scroll over their stuff, it tells you all about the player, right? Your mouse was just scrolling over the numbers.
Yes, if you go over the player, but also up here at the top, and I'll take the search box out here. And if I click on Cody Bellinger, you're going to get a couple of different things in here. You're going to get his historical, his stats for the last few years. You're going to get his impact, which is going to tell you throughout the draft. You're going to have your team totals in here, which are right here. Your goal, because you can set your goals in here. I want 400 singles. I want 300 doubles. It will set them automatically, but you can go in and change them. And it will tell you how much this player will impact your roster right now. So Cody Bellinger is projected for 87 singles. That's going to be 21.8% of what you need at this point. So you can compare impact. And then in the forecaster tab, we have a couple of different things. We're looking at consistency factor on a scale of 1-100. How consistent has this player's performance been? Was it in 2020? And then over a 3-year period, how consistent was it? how good was he in the second half of the season? In this case, Cody Bellinger's production dropped 16% in the last half. Now with veterans, that's not such a big deal. And in 2020 might not be such a big deal. But if you see, for example, a young player who made a big gain in the second half, he might be a guy who might break out a little bit, someone you want to look at.
For sure.
Slugging, let's see, team support. This is basically lineup support here, and the ratings for the Dodgers, they're 106, 100 is even, so he's got a better than average team around him. Ballpark, 106, a little bit better for him. Injury rating, Cody Bellinger's been pretty consistent and pretty durable. He's been playing time. He's in the lineup 100% of the time. He bats fourth. 2021 forecast is for an increase in production, probably based on what happened last year.
What is all the stuff go through with me? Just take a quick rundown of the stuff across the top. There's so many things. Like even when you open up the software, right? When you open it
up the top, yeah.
There's like all of these things. Okay, there's like I don't know, projections, and show the home screen.
Yeah. All right. What I'm going to do here, let me change to my house league because there'll be some numbers to work with here.
Okay.
So I'm going to switch leagues. And I know we talked about before the show, talked about how many leagues can you have. As far as I know, it's unlimited. I don't know if anyone has ever pressed the full limit there. But for the show, for example, for the Sirius show, I have an AL only setup and an NL only setup and an OBP league and a one catcher league and a points league. So that if a caller has a question about an AL only league, I can just flip right over to the AL only league and get the ratings based on that.
Okay.
So here's my house league for this year, and it'll take a second to load here.
So obviously you're answering one of the questions that I put in the rundown, which was, can you put in more than one league in there?
Yes. Yeah, you can put in several leagues. And like I said, I don't know if there's a limit. I don't know if anyone's gone long enough. I've got a dozen leagues in at any given time. So you can do different leagues in there.
Okay.
And the most fun ones are the Yahoo leagues, because the Yahoo leagues, the draft software will hook up with the draft room and populate the rosters as the draft goes by itself.
I saw that. I did see that option there. That's pretty cool.
It is so much fun. I remember the first year it came out, I went in, I drafted 4 Yahoo leagues. That's how much fun it was. But and we want to do it with all the sites, but the sites won't let us, won't give us the information to allow us to hook up to the draft room. They've been very, close to the vest about their.
Yeah, but why do they do that to you and not to other places? Like Fantasy Pros can do it. Why? I don't know.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
So across the top here, I can bring up a search button here. League setup is you can get into the setup and make changes that you need to make about scoring format, roster format, auction values, things like that. That's more or less what you do before the league gets started. Projections are this screen here. I'll put it back on. And basically, this is what's left in my league. We're through with the draft right now, and these are free agents that are left. And Neris is probably the most valuable guy by our ratings that's left under our format here. And you can go in each individual position and look at the best catcher available. Down here, and I've got so much open now, it's a little bit slow. Or all batters or all relief pitchers. But let's see, and we'll go to historical. When you call up a player, it will give you not only the player and the historical stats, but a little bit of our write-ups. And at least it will give you some of the key indicators that we use, like BABIP. For example, it says BABIP here. His BABIP was 304. This is Pedro Severino. And that was a gain of 0.19. His contact rate was 74%. That was down 4% from the previous year. Home run distance, some of our key indicators that we use. There's a little bit of a note here. Severino has decent contact skills with an encouraging 17% homer to fly ball rate. Also posted a decent 8% barrel rate at only 26. There's upside. So just a little bit of a note. Some of the other players, there'll be more notes and more extensive notes. Some of the players will just have some of our indicators and how they changed.
You guys have over like 1,700 players that you profile. I read that. So that's
there's a ton of them. Yeah,
you don't have to worry about your player not being in the software.
No, generally speaking, if it looks like we don't have players that don't look like they're going to perform at all in the major leagues this year, that probably won't be in there, but you can go in and add him and add your own projection if you want to.
Okay.
Mostly it's guys that potentially could play this year. And as you can see, our league is drafted. It's a 12-team league, pretty deep, and we've still got all these players left listed in our program, and there's more. That's just the top 100 right there.
Okay.
So here's the draft advisor part of this, and this is really useful. One of the things you find with the draft advisory program while you're doing a draft is, generally speaking, you will know more about other people's teams than they will know. Because you'll know their strengths and weaknesses, you know what the needs are. I'll show you that in a second. But the draft advisor here shows each position, the top player left available at the position, and what the difference is in estimated auction value for the next best player, and the next best player, and the next best player, and so on. Now we're really down to the end of the draft here, so the only position that shows any difference is Ohtani is there as a DH, and he was owned by one of my guys, but I just didn't put him on the team because I put the pitcher on his team. Whole big long story there. But his estimated auction value is $7, and then you go only 3 players down, and Morales has a 0 value. So you're looking, if you're at this point in the draft, you go, oh geez, I'll take Ohtani because there's a big dip. It goes from 7 to 2, bigger dip in the second column than any of the other columns. And we can go back and look at a more full league at this point. Underneath, it shows me each position, how many are drafted and how many are needed. So in this, I've got 12 catchers.
All together, all through for everybody.
Throughout the league, yes.
Oh, sweet. That's
so when you're looking there and go, do I take my catcher in this round? And you look there and you say, only one team needs a catcher. Hey, that's me. I'm the only guy who needs a catcher. Yeah. I don't have to take him this round. I can probably get by going another round there.
Great.
And then on up here, you can select a position, in this case, pitchers. And we have the pitchers by tier. We have 8 pitchers in tier 1 in this league that I had. 8 are selected. There's none remaining. Mm-hmm. So you can also start to see where the tiers are on this particular round. And then we get down to tier 5. We have 17 pitchers in tier 5. 12 are selected. There are 5 left.
Now, I'm sure you can change, if you don't like that player in that tier, you can change the tier, right?
Yes. You just adjust if you adjust the statistics that are projected, it will do it automatically.
Okay.
This is where you have to trust the force, because again, we're back to trusting the force again, because our projections put this player in tier 1, and based on those projections and those stats, he's a tier 1 pitcher. If you don't think he's going to accomplish those stats, that's one thing. You can go in and change those, and then it'll re-tier him wherever they are based on the rest of our projections.
Okay, I gotcha. So you don't change the tier. You change the stats if you don't agree with the stats, and then it will change the tier for you.
Right. We get on to the draft summary here. And this is where it gets interesting. And this is where I say, your other teams better than they know themselves. So for example, based on our projected stats, here are all the accumulated stats for the rosters that in my league's draft, not including the reserves. I can include the reserves if I check this box, but it's giving me the number of at-bats the number of projected at-bats I've drafted, runs, RBIs, homers, so on and so forth.
Second place. That's you in second?
Yeah, that's me in second place. Yeah.
Okay, I hope the guy that's in first isn't the guy that you gave the software to.
No. In fact, that guy is he came in kind of low here, but he kind of went against. He didn't go by the force. He kind of went against the force a little bit.
So if you're gonna if you're gonna do it, you got to do it. Like, I mean, it's very tough to stick to what they're offering you because of your own biases and stuff. So is it important that if you're going to trust the force, you do it like completely, or not? Like if you don't, then, it's going to not really work out for you as well.
I don't like this to be the Bible. I don't think any of us at Fantistics like this to be the Bible. In other words, we don't necessarily encourage you to go in and just draft based on, what the draft advisory program tells you to do. But it gives you it kind of checks your biases, and it kind of makes you aware of things that you might not be aware of, especially in inflation auction value, for example, is one that you've done it in the past before, where you get a pitcher comes up and he sells for $5 less than you thought he was going to sell for, and you put a +5 in there and try to figure out what the inflation is on the draft, and you do it. You do it on the back of a napkin, right? Is basically how you do it.
Well, nowadays I do it on a spreadsheet, but I've probably done it on the back of a napkin.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So this does it in a more specific, more quantified way. And again, that auction value, the estimated auction value will change as it goes along. It's very dynamic. It's giving you an up to the pick evaluation of the economy in the draft at the time. And the economy is draft resources, whether that be dollars or whether that be draft position, scarcity of stats, scarcity of position, all those kinds of things. So it's keeping you updated as you go along. And again, after a certain point, you still have to make value judgments as to what your roster needs. In other words, do I go for the home run guy? Do I go for the pitcher? Oftentimes, I'll be sitting in a draft and the best pitcher on the board is up there. And by the way, that pitcher, the best player on the board is a pitcher, and that pitcher is more highly valued than that outfielder I want to take because I feel, you know what, I need a little more bang for my buck. But what the draft advisory program is telling me, it's soothing my worries because I can find homers in the rest of the draft. I can't find what that pitcher can give me in the rest of the draft. So if I can afford to go for that pitcher, I might go for that pitcher. But those are the value judgments you make. It's telling you, I know you want that outfielder, but you know, this guy's still sitting around and he's a pretty good value, so that you can make a decision based on what you think you need. I mean, we all have to draft. We all have to make decisions, right? For sure.
And so how long have you been using this software? I mean, it's obviously it works for you. It's been around forever. So you must have been using it. You said that you go back to Lenny days.
Well, yeah. I mean, the draft advisory program, I wonder how many years the draft advisory program's been around. 8, maybe 9. And I've used it from day one. In fact, Michael and I were talking the other day. We had a caller on the show, and his auction was a little bit weird. There was all kinds of stuff. Oh, we were talking about doing a slow draft auction and how that went.
I heard that, right?
Yeah. And the guy called and he explained it to us. And, you know, Michael just basically shook his head at me and said, I don't know how people draft without the software. And I said, I don't know either anymore. I really don't.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's, you know, once that's like your companion at the draft, like that, you know,
I've done it though. I've done it. In fact, I don't know if we're going to do it this year, but we've done a listener league. We're the last remaining show that's done a listener league on Sirius for years. And often I'm with drafting it while I'm on the air, so I don't get a chance to work with the draft advisory program. So a lot of times you can pull out, it's just that here's in a nutshell. Here's my favorite kind of story about what the draft advisory program does for you. If you change from batting average to OBP, right, in your league, and you're going to a league with OBP, there are certain guys that pop up into your head, like Joey Gallo. You say, oh, he's a good OBP player. His value goes up a little bit, right? We all know that. And we all know players whose value goes down when you go from batting average to OBP. Mm-hmm. We know a handful of them. And that's great to know those guys. But what if you knew how the rankings change for each and every player in the league based on the change from batting average to OBP and how it related to the rest of the league? This, for every one of those questions, this is what the draft advisory program does. It takes you from writing on a napkin about inflation to actually calculating it. And it takes you from, I know this guy's a better OBP player, but that's the only guy I know who gets a raise in value. And it tells you about every player in the league and how his value changes when you get OBP.
It does matter too. It really matters. And some players, it really makes a difference. Like, I mean, Carlos Santana gets a huge bump in OBP leagues, but I only know a handful. Even though I talk about baseball every day, I still only know, you know, I know the popular ones, and I probably have not noticed hundreds of them in drafts. So
right, and of course, any one player change sends ripples throughout the player pool in terms of valuation and things like that. So it gives you a quantified reading of what that is. What you do with it, that's still up to you. But instead of just, you know, ham and egging it, you talk about Carlos Santana in that house league where we're an OBP league. I drafted him. It might have been the third to last player on my team because first base at a certain point you've got a ton of first basemen that pretty much do the same thing. But what I know is that Carlos Santana is valuable in an OBP league. Other guys in my league may know it, may not. I don't know, but he's not the guy whose name comes up when you think OBP league. Oh, all of a sudden he's very valuable. And he is. He's pretty valuable. First of all, he's an accumulator. He just accumulates stuff. He plays every day and he accumulates numbers. But he also gives you very good OBP.
I love it. Like one of the best in the league. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the best in the league. You can go to insiderbaseball.com and check out all the tools that they have. You could do a free trial. You could sign up there. How much is it? I don't even know how much it is, but I really am tempted to purchase it. Okay.
The entire package, which includes the draft advisory program and the year-long subscription to Fantistics, and we're with you to the last day of the season. And by the way, also included in that is you can email the staff. We're all pretty We're all pretty open and accessible, and ask questions about your particular player. I think that's $65 for the year. It includes the draft advisory program.
Now, throughout the season, you have tools for this. You can explore the tools just by going to insiderbaseball.com. You can explore the tools. There's a whole long list of tools that you use throughout the season, and there's cheat sheets and weekly pickups and trade. You have a trade analyzer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So you can put in your potential trade and go that way. You can keep track of as many teams as you want. So if you're in 5 or 6 leagues, you can do a team tracker for every team in all your leagues, and you'll be able to get your weekly lineup planner based there as well. The pitching logs are also awesome. We've got the last 8 or 10 performances for each pitcher, their last starts, with some in-depth stats, not just the basic stats, but some of the indicators we use to figure out how they're going and what's going to happen going forward. And it's all color coded. So you can say, this was a good start. That was a bad start. This is trending well. This isn't trending well, that type of thing. So all kinds of great tools to help you win. So
is Tout Wars going to be your only auction league this year? Or?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm not a big auction fan.
I think that a lot of people that don't do many auctions are not really auction fans, but I feel like when you do 1 or 2, it's like you like that. I mean, it gives you the opportunity to have any players that you want, where a snake draft, you can't get, if you wanted to spend enough money, you could get Yelich and Tatis on the same team. Yep.
Yeah, and you can sell me on that now, because my draft season so far this year is, how it gets in drafts. You're either on top of the draft or you're chasing the draft. And by chasing the draft, I mean is the player that you have targeted for this round, the type of player that you want to get, and the player that exemplifies that goes a couple picks before you.
Oh,
and I've had a run of that this year. I've been behind all of the drafts this year. So I'm kind of looking forward in a way to an auction and being able to think a little bit more and not have to, because I was thinking I was 15th in there. I'm trying to figure out my strategy for big wraparounds and big gaps in between picks, but the auction will be fun.
I don't have any drafts. I mean, I have 1 draft. I'm on my last pick, but I've done already a couple best balls, and I haven't been in the TGFBI league for a couple years now because I missed out on it 1 year, and then they didn't send me the email for the next year. But next year I'll try to get in it early, and we have a couple people from the website, that represent the website, and so that's fun. And we keep track of that. We did labor. I am excited about Tout Wars. It's always my favorite draft of the year. I feel like just from right off the top of my head, they spend a lot of there's a couple people in this league that are going to spend a ton of money on pitching. And so you'll see players go out super expensive early, and then they'll just wait. And that's good for people like me, who I don't spend more than $33 or $4 on any player. I always just right down the middle. I don't want to have stars and scrubs on my team. But Paul Sporer, for instance, he is a huge pitching guy, and has a lot of his knowledge is in pitching. So he will spend a lot of money on hitting, and then he'll just wait back, and he knows he's good at picking out those pitchers that are going to cost little but perform better. And so you obviously do believe in position scarcity. That is one thing that the draft software absolutely pays attention to and changes throughout the draft. I have not seen any draft software. I use RotoWire draft software. I've used several different softwares. I haven't seen any that actually change the value according to the inflation or the position scarcity that's left available in the draft.
Yeah, it's dynamic. I mean, think about in this draft, if 3 pitchers go off the board off the top at $50 a piece, and you've got X amount of money out of the pool, and you've got all those pitching stats and those innings and those good ratios coming out of the pool of position, you need to know how valuable the remaining pitchers become.
So, how many of them are left? Because the innings are a big deal. We don't have an innings. Here's a secret for you. I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I learned the hard way. So in Tout Wars head-to-head, there's supposed to be, you would think there would be a weekly minimum innings, because if you're playing head-to-head, what I figured out early is that if you're facing a team that you feel like their pitching is overwhelming, right, that their starting pitchers are way better than your starting pitchers, you could bench all of your starting pitchers because if you get 3 out of 5 categories, or
right.
You really see that doesn't really work anymore because we changed the rules. But back then we were doing head-to-head roto, and if you won 3 out of 5, you got the wins for that week in each
Right.
different hitting and pitching. And so people were like benching all of their starting pitchers so that they could win in saves, ERA, and WHIP. And then there was no minimum innings. As long as you had like the minimum innings at the end of the season, it was fine. And I was like, that's not cool. You should really change that. But it's not like that anymore because it's all about points. And so you're not going to bend if you're, you're going to try to put together the most points no matter what. There's no minimums innings in Tout Wars. There in Labor, there's 950 minimum, and that is quite a lot in a season like this, especially in an only league. So
right.
That's a big deal. And I'm sure that the software takes.
I'm thinking that that's what plays into, as you can see on the right here, and I'm back to the Tout Wars. You see on the right how the starting pitching is valued a little bit lower than you'd expect.
Yeah.
First of all, the innings cap, the only innings cap there is in this league, for me looking over the format, is the 2 relievers that have to be in your lineup every week.
Exactly.
That's going to cut down some innings for you there. But this is going to make pitching. This is going to make bad pitching more valuable, because you're just going to go look for innings. You're going to be searching for innings.
Absolutely. I told you I came in 3rd place last year. The only relievers I had were in the reserve round. I did not draft it. I did not pay for any relief pitchers, and I was able to get several of them. And, this is when pitchers that qualify as relief pitchers, but actually are starters, that becomes very valuable in this league, because you're looking for innings. They're 3 points, and, you get a point per out. So if your pitcher is in there for 5 innings, that's 15 points. It's a big deal.
Yeah. How do you feel about the way baseball is going? We've got average starts down to 5+ innings pitched, and you've got relievers that have to go 3 batters. So they're going to be pitching more innings. You get a reliever who makes 2 or 3 appearances in a week. That might be 3 innings, as opposed to your starter who rotates once through. A bad starter, by the way, who only gives you 5 innings. So
yes, the biggest part about this is that I don't think people really pay attention, but most of the pitchers are not going deep into games. You have to, if you're a starting pitcher and you come out there, the first guy that throws off the mound during that game, you have to go 5 innings to qualify for a win. However, the guy that comes in after you, right, he can qualify for a win if he just faces 1 batter. He can qualify for the win. And to me, it's like, how much easier is it for relievers to get wins than it used to be? And how much harder is it? Well, you can't rely on, like, this kind of brings us into the topic of predictability. Like,
right.
Which stats are the easiest to predict, and wins are not that. I do love the fact that we are able to pull in more pitchers that are valuable in fantasy that were being totally ignored just a couple years ago. I like the Freddie Peraltas, or even like Tony Gonsolin this year, who is not going to have a spot in the rotation, but could be very valuable because he's a great pitcher. So I think we were missing out on a lot of good pitching, and now we're able to bring it in. I always try to look at like the positive side of it, but I think it's weak. Okay. That starting pitchers are this weak.
Well, let me go back to that, what you were talking about, how wins we don't depend on so much. And this is another place where what we do at Fantistics comes into play, because we know that some statistics are more predictable than other statistics, but we only know it on a very offhand way. And the way we normally express it is, well, I'm not paying up for wins, because wins are circumstantial and they're not necessarily based on the player's skill, and you can't really count on them. Right. So we take wins into account, but we don't weigh them too heavily because we know they're unpredictable. What if I told you that ERA and wins are just about as unpredictable?
Oh, I believe you. Absolutely. Yeah. And so what's your favorite? I usually, I use a very basic way of looking at pitching. And I was just taught one other way of looking at pitching, which was our friend that is a listener. He says to add the ground ball rate plus the strikeout rate. And if it's 70, then it's good. And I mean, it kind of works out. But for me, I'm always looking at whether or not they allow more hits than innings pitched. And it's very basic, but.
I'm laughing because at Fantistics, we call that the Kevin Brown quotient. And it was,
it
was Nick Rossoletti who came up with it for us, or introduced it to us in one of his spots on the show. And his thing is, if your ground ball rate and your strikeout rate is 75% or more, that's pretty damn good.
Well, it's gone down, okay, over the years.
Well, we've nicknamed it the Kevin Brown quotient. That's kind of what we go by. But let me go back to predictability of statistics here.
Okay.
If you go to the insiderbaseball.com and you go to the baseball blog, and it's the lead article on the site right now, Anthony Perry wrote his annual piece about advanced scoring weights for the draft advisory program. And what you can do in the draft advisory program is weigh the columns based on their predictability. So, for example, you won't weigh wins and strikeouts the same when evaluating a pitcher's value, because wins are unpredictable. Strikeouts are much more predictable. So you don't want to weigh those two columns. You don't want to weigh those two columns equally. We know that. Those are pretty basic stuff. But he goes through and he establishes the predictability for every column, standard 5x5 scoring columns, and a ton of other columns as well, depending on what your league uses. So, for example, let's go through pitching. We've got wins, and this is based on this is a correlation. What he does is he takes the stat and sees how much the stat predicts the same stat in a 3-year period.
Okay.
So in other words, if a guy wins 10 games this year and he won 10 games the year before, not that matters, but what's over 3 years, what's the likelihood he's going to reproduce that performance?
Okay.
Wins, as we know, entirely unpredictable. That's a 0.28 correlation there. And anything above 0.6 is very good. 0.2 is, 0.2 is questionable. It's just that, as we know with wins, it's just not as predictable.
I see this. Okay.
Yeah. ERA, 0.31. Really not that much more predictable than wins. And that's because, and especially if we look back on 2020, if we're evaluating a guy's ERA performance, and by the way, this is why I've been telling everybody this year, if you're going to evaluate pitchers based on 2020, get very familiar with game logs. You got to check the game logs, because one or two starts can really skew a player's overall statistics.
Totally. Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. So ERA, even in a full season, a couple runs here or there. And listen, as you and I know, a pitcher will hang 3 pitches in a game, 2 or 3 pitches in a game, almost invariably. The question is, what happens when he does that, and when does he do it? Does he do it to a guy who can hit it out of the ballpark with 2 guys on, or does he do it to the 8th hitter in the lineup with nobody on? Right? It's all sequencing. He's still going to hang the same amount of pitches. It's just what happens, when he does hang it. Right. So ERA is less predictable because instead of hanging that pitch with nobody on, he hung that pitch with 2 guys on to the number 4 hitter in the lineup. Yeah, and that's going to change your ERA considerably.
Right.
Saves, just a 0.28, just like wins in terms of predictability. And we all know the thing there. It's that closers don't keep the jobs, right? There are very few guys who are assured of their job throughout the 2021 season, so we can't predict saves.
I see this. Okay, I posted it in our chat room. So
Whip 0.51, very good correlation. You take a guy's whip, you have a pretty good idea that that's what he's going to produce, because that's part of his skill set. That's very much defined in his skill set. And chances are, if he was a 1-2 last year, he's going to do something similar this year, given enough innings and a big enough sample. Same thing with strikeouts, 0.58. Very predictable. If a guy gets the same amount of innings, he's going to probably strike out a very similar amount of players.
Okay. So it looks like here on just the basic ones, it looks like the highest correlation is stolen bases.
Stolen bases, right. Yeah.
But if you click here on that little link, you click there, you could see the bigger picture with all the stats. You could see that stolen bases is still, or what does this 1.7 mean? That's strikeouts.
That's how you adjust the software. In other words, you would put that weighting into the software. The correlation is on the left. I don't know if you're showing it, but the correlation is on the left, and on the right is the adjustment you make in the software for that particular stat and its predictability.
Okay.
So, for example, let's go. What would be the highest one? Strikeout. I'm sorry?
It's the second to the last one on the right side, right above Roto Dollars.
Ks per innings pitched.
Okay. Oh.
But let's just go to Ks. It's a 0.58 correlation. What we do is we weigh the strikeouts in our valuing the pitcher at 1.7. One would be we weigh it level. And if what most people do, what most software does, clinically, what the software does by default is weigh each column equally at 1. So in this case, we've dropped wins to 0.8, and we've up strikeouts to 1.7. So we're going to value players with strikeouts a little bit higher than Eduardo Rodriguez and his 19 wins in 2019, for example. We're not going to value that very highly, but we're going to value strikeout guys because we're pretty sure they're much more predictable, and we can also we can predict their performance better. On top of that, what's built into the program is predictability of position. So, for example, we all know we don't put much stock into catchers, right? In their statistics, because catchers get dinged up. It's a very physical position. And if they miss a lot of time, they can't play a lot of the time, so they have less at bats. And oftentimes they're playing at less than 100% because they're dinged up, because that's the nature of the position. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the middle infielder, same thing with the second baseman and shortstops. First base is not a very taxed position physically. You can go out and play first base, you can be durable, and you can reproduce your stats as a result because you're not playing hurt a lot of the time. So we're going to weigh first basemen and their predictability of statistics a little bit higher than we are catchers, a lot higher than we are catchers, and a little bit higher than we are going to do with second basemen and things like that.
Now I get it. I get it now, what the weighing and the correlation mean together.
Yeah, so if you go on this draft advisory program, there's, and even if you download the free demo, there's a help section up the top, and that's going to take you to a link on the page. And by the way, the free download is worth the help section alone, because what the help section does is it talks about all these things. It talks about this predictability of statistics. It talks about predictability by position. It talks about how we project players. One of the things, the number of things that we do, what we lean on more in terms of predictability for a player and how we project them. We're getting more and more StatCast oriented as it goes. And we're getting more on quality of contact as it goes. It was hard percentage a few years ago. And then we got more information on StatCast. We got exit velocity. We got launch angle. We got barrels. We've got hard hit percentage, which is my new favorite, by the way.
Hard hit percentage is your favorite?
Yeah, it's one of my new favorites. Hard hit percentage is the percentage of times the player hits the ball with an exit velocity of 95 miles an hour or more. And the reason that's significant is because if you were to graph the results based on Wober, for example, of exit velocities, right up till 95, it's relatively flat. At 95 and plus, it starts to spike, and it spikes very quickly. So if your average exit velocity is 95, good things are happening. If it's 96 and 97, very good things are happening. When you hit the ball that hard, as Anthony Perry puts it, good things are happening. Mm-hmm. And it's a more reliable statistic than hard percentage. The Baseball Info Solutions is, I guess it's Sports Info Solutions now. It's a much more reliable metric than hard hit percentage, because hard hit percentage is kind of a black box. First of all, it's scored. It's kind of subjective. People go through it. It's a little less subjective than it was, but there are people who go through it and declare a hard hit or a non-hard hit. And then on top of that, the formula that they use, we don't know. It's proprietary. It's kind of a black box. And what we've seen over the years is a little bit of difference in those. In fact, if you look at 2020 stats and you look at a bunch of your players in hard percentage, most of them went down. So we figure that there was some deflation in the number this year. And basically speaking, the way the formula changed, the hard percentage went down. And the way we're verifying that is if you look at, if you like me, I love the guys at Fangraphs. Scott, I love you guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Yeah, I hate ATM fees, but I will go pay up for Fangraphs memberships every year and we're playing with Paul Sporo, who's one of my favorite guys. I love to listen to him. I love his writing. But you can put StatCast statistics on your dashboard now on Fangraphs. So I can look at hard hit percentage and look at his hard percentage as opposed to his hard hit percentage, which is StatCast. I can look at his average exit velocity, and I can see, well, okay, the hard hit percentage went down, but most of this other stuff, the exit velocity and the hard hit percentage went up. So I'm just playing that off to something changed in the scoring on hard percentage. Here's the other thing about hard percentage that not a lot of people know. Michael Waldo has been talking about this a lot on the show. Hard hit percentage has a different scoring for each type of hit. In other words, hard percentage in Sports Info Solutions is they look at a ground ball, and a ground ball that goes 90 miles an hour, they might consider hard hit. A line drive that goes 90 miles an hour is not hard hit. It's a medium or a soft.
Okay.
So they have a different formula for computing hard percentage for each type of ball. So what we've been doing when we're looking at home run per fly ball and hard contact percentage and things like that, we get the fly ball hard contact percentage because a lot of times it's skewed. Listen, if Joey Gallo hits a ground ball, it's probably not very well hit. He missed it, right? So
but if Pat Jr. hits a ground ball, it's going far.
Right, yeah, exactly. So that's going to skew the overall hard contact number for Joey Gallo because when he hits a line drive or he hits a ground ball, he probably mishit the ball. Because he's a total lift guy.
Let me ask you a couple questions, or I think we already answered one question, but one of the questions was about Kevin Gausman.
Yeah.
What do you, hold on a second. Did we already answer the one about your favorite metric that you use to predict a breakout player? Like, which, is it one of these that you have here? It's not one of these.
Oh, God, no, it's like picking my children. Favorite metric? No.
Decide who's going to break out next year. Like, what underlying stats are you looking at that you could say this player is going to break out? A hitter, maybe.
Well, first of all, okay, we'll talk hitters. Hitters and pitchers are obviously different things.
Yeah.
But they're not so different because my favorite thing now to look at is quality of contact and plate approach. Those are my two things that I look for right now. And I like to see progress in both. So the Kevin Gausman question we'll talk about in a second, because two of my favorite things to look at for both hitters and pitchers, and I don't have a favorite, it's got to be what the player needs. In other words, if we want to know, I think your guy in the chat asked whether Kevin Gausman's strikeout rate was sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And so when something changes like that, my favorite question is why? I want to know what changed on it to see whether it's sustainable. Was it luck? Was it small sample? Was it a skill change? Did he find something? With hitters, for example, I will look at their swinging strike percentage and I will look at their chase rate because that tells me two things. It tells me how well he makes contact when he swings, and it tells me how often he's fooled. So if a young player is starting to get his chase rate down a little bit, he's starting to zone up a little bit more and his contract rate is coming up, he's starting to get it. He's starting to acclimate. He's fooled less. And oftentimes you have to put those aside when a player is really young because they have that adjustment period, right? They go in and there's a month of time when they're throwing him a slider low and away and he can't handle it. Mm-hmm. But maybe 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, he's starting to handle it a little bit. So you have to read that into it.
Right.
Kevin Gausman, for example, the question was, can he sustain that strikeout rate of last year, which was a career high, and it was 32%, I think. Yeah,
it was like 12 or 13% higher than it ever has been.
Right. His career is 22, and in 2019 he was 25, which was a career high at the time too. I look over at his swinging strike percentage and his chase rate, which again tells me one of two things: how much he's beating hitters, that's swinging strike percentage, and how much he's fooling hitters, that's his chase rate. His swinging strike percentage went up considerably at 15.2, but his chase rate actually went down a little bit. So no change there. So none of those things told me the story I wanted to know. Was this real? Right. So I scroll down, and I'm going down my Fangraphs page. And when I look at pitchers, I often look at what changed in pitch deployment. And two of the things I noticed, his fastball velocity was up to 95.1 on average, by the way. And that's a career high for him. So he's, well, not quite a career high. In 2015, it was 95.3. But he's back up to his full velocity. And his fastball percentage has gone down the last 4 years from 64 to 58 to 57 to last year, 51%. You know what he's throwing now? He's throwing a changeup. And he threw it 13.6% last year, as opposed to 5% the year before and sub 4% every other year of his career, almost every other year of his career. And on top of that, I'm looking at the delta between those two pitches, 95.1 on the fastball, 84.3 on the changeup on average. He's got a 10-mile-an-hour delta on that thing. That's the magic number, because hitters cannot straddle a fastball and a changeup when it's 10 miles an hour difference or more. You can't. Yeah,
that's great info, dude.
Yeah, you can't sit on the fastball and react to the changeup. You can do it at 5 miles an hour, 6 miles an hour. When it gets 10, it starts to get really difficult. But here's the thing. The 95.1 mile an hour average fastball velocity last year, I'm kind of throwing it out because it's a short year and every pitcher went into the season knowing they weren't throwing 180 innings pitched. They were throwing 80 innings pitched. Okay. And so fastball velocities are generally up overall because pitchers didn't have to save themselves. They went out and they threw. It's basically when you put a pitcher into the bullpen, a starter into the bullpen, his fastball velocity goes up because he knows he only has to throw a limited amount of them. He doesn't have to do 5 innings. It's the same thing with total innings pitched. So I think Kevin Gausman's velocity comes back a little bit. If the hitters get a book on that changeup, he basically doubled his changeup usage, maybe a little bit more. Maybe they're looking for it a little bit more. It becomes a little bit less effective. So no, he can't reproduce that 32% strikeout rate, but he's still pitching pretty well. He's going to have a very representative strikeout rate. He's not going to pitch as well as he pitched in 2020, but he's going to pitch pretty well. It's going to be, he's legitimate. His gains are legitimate, but there's a lot of inflation in there just because of the small sample in 2020.
He says that's perfect. It was exactly what he was looking to find out. And I wonder, I do like the fact I've been seeing lately that pitchers are using their best pitch a little more than they used to, where it used to be like, you're just going to use your fastball, whether you're good at throwing the fastball or not. And then you're going to, throw them off with off-speed pitches or secondary pitches. And it seems to me that coaches are pushing pitchers nowadays to use their best pitch more often instead of just, faulting to the fastball.
Well, we talk about adjustments with young players, how they have to make adjustments. I think the league makes adjustments and it's evolution. In other words, a few years ago, we saw velocity become the big thing in pitching and teams started developing velocity. They just got hard throwers and developed hard throwers and they were beating hitters with the velocity. Well, here's the thing. You're throwing a fastball 65% of the time. I don't care if you're throwing it 97. Major league hitters can hit it. If they know it's coming, they can hit a bullet if they have to. Yeah. So what's happened is hitters have adjusted, and as teams started developing velocity, they kind of went away, as you said, from the secondary pitchers. But now teams are going back to developing secondary pitchers because you can't beat hitters with velocity now. You can't beat them up in the zone. You can't beat them down in the zone. They're covering the zone very well. They've adapted quite a bit. So what you have to do is you have to beat them with location and change of speed. So you have to have it's more important than ever to have a good secondary pitch, probably a second secondary pitch or a third pitch as well. Dineless and Lament aside, I think you still need 3 pitches, and I think you need 3 pitches more than ever.
Okay, 3 good. I love Jose Barrios this year. I'm not going to make you analyze Jose Barrios, but I just feel like he's going to break out this year. He's got a problem with command. He's got a problem with walking batters, but his velocity is higher now than it's ever been. He works out super hard in the off season. I think he's right at the perfect age. We've been waiting for Barrios to do this for a while. I'm a big fan of Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer loves Jose Barrios' delivery. Trevor Bauer is a big fan of not allowing good contact. So basically, it's okay if they hit the ball, but it's all about how are they making contact with it. So if they hit it, is it going to be a ground ball bouncing in the infield? And I think that's what he's been trying to teach to Plesac and Bieber, and before he left Cleveland, he was all over that stuff. So we'll see how good he does in Dodger Stadium. So
Barrios here, as I'm looking at it, I'm looking at 11.6% strike rate. He beats hitters. He's got velocity, so he beats hitters. Very healthy chase rate of 34.4. It was 36 last year, so he's fooling hitters as well. As you said, and this is where we're going at Fantistics more and more, we're going more and more to quality of contact. We understand strikeouts, but for hitters, we want to know when they put the ball in play, how good is the quality of contact. When pitchers allow contact, we want to know how good that quality is. Mm-hmm. Hard hit percentage, only 32% last year. Now, again, I think there's some deflation in that number, so I wouldn't dig into it too much. Barrels, only 6.3%. Hard hit percentage, 39%. Those are all very healthy percentages. He's controlling the quality of contact, and his strikeout rates are going up a little bit more. So those are all good signs.
For me, dude, it's bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there's 2 things for me. I want to know about a pitcher. I want to know how many guys they walk, because this is the game now. How many guys do you walk and how many home runs do you give up? If you can avoid walks and you can avoid home runs, or you can avoid walks or home runs, you're going to be doing okay in this game right now. You just can't do both. You can't walk guys and give up home runs. Now, he gives up more than the home run for 9, but that number hasn't gone up, and he's pitching in Minnesota, which has become a pretty good hitter's park for the most part. It's showing up like a home run park anyway. So, yeah, if he controls that walk rate, and all he's got to do is, to me, he's got to have more confidence in his pitching. That indicates to me a young kid who's still nibbling and still trying to beat batters on the edge, but he can beat batters straight up. And he's got to learn to go in and make the batter beat him as opposed to giving him a base.
I believe that this is the last year that you're going to be able to get Jose Barrios at a discount. Like the other, like Luis Castillo, just last year it was like maybe it was last year. The year before it was pretty much in my head that it was going to be one of the last seasons you were going to be able to get Luis Castillo at a good price. But he hasn't really exploded in value, like in cost. But I still like Luis Castillo. I'm the type that goes for like Castillo, Kershaw. I want Aaron Nola, and even Steven Strasburg I'm kind of a fan of, although Steven Strasburg's a little bit sketchy right now, so we'll see. But I happen to have Sonny Gray and Strasburg on my labor team, or one of my teams. I have them both the same.
Was Sonny Gray by choice? Did you get a good price on him anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like I did. I don't usually draft Sonny Gray, but at the time in the draft, I felt like he was healthy at the time, so we'll see. But Lou Blasi from Fantistics Insider Baseball, and classy Lou Blasi. And I even have my own song for Fantistics.
I know.
Fantistics are fantastic. So anyway, thanks for coming on so much. Thanks for introducing us to your software. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's great. We asked the guys to put your song in our opening too, but we haven't happened yet. I got to ask them again because I want to make sure.
Let me put a couple more sentences in it. It's only one, but I will do it, and I hope that they put it up there. That'd be awesome. Okay.
Listen, I owe you thanks. I owe Lenny thanks. Lenny, when I first came on the air at Sirius, Lenny and Tony were working together, and they were the show before us, and they always had me do a crossover, and they were very helpful. Lenny has always been such a big friend and been a big help to me at Sirius, and you guys have always been friendly with us, and we just love it, and we love hitting after you. We really do on Sunday.
We love it too. So next time we go to have steaks, and we cook our own steaks where Michael Waldo lives. Yeah, we're gonna go there again, and we'll hope that you might come out there and meet us. But
you got to come up to my neck of the woods. I'll have to. I guess I'll have to feed you lobster. I'm not a big lobster guy, but that's what we eat up here apparently.
In Boston?
I'm north of Boston, actually, here on the coast. Yeah.
Well, believe me, we should. We have been trying to take a trip. Well, Lenny's son goes to college up there at Oswego, so it's kind of close anyway. Yeah. Thanks so much, and good luck this weekend. I will see you this weekend. We will be drafting on Sunday, right? Is our draft Sunday?
Sunday at 5. Yeah.
Sunday at 5. If you have any questions or need to, like whatever, I've been in the same league for the past 5 years. So if you have anything that you need to know, reach out. I'll be happy to help you, and we'll talk.
I'm going to take you up on that. Michael's going to be helping me. Don't tell anybody. Michael will be helping me out a little bit here, but yeah.
Plus, you got that. It makes me want to use the software just so I can see what you're doing, because it's helpful. But you think about all the different softwares that are going to be going on in that draft. Like Ariel has his own projections, and everybody, Fantasy Alarm, and everybody has software. I'm really tempted to get this software, but it's probably not a good idea for me to use it for the first time in that draft,
maybe it's just an extra voice, right? You don't have to use it, rely on it. But it's just an extra voice to help you out.
For sure. Thanks so much, Lou. Have a great night.
Great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.